What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I wanted to show off today is Hunder. It's a really fun deck that can do some really interesting plays, and it plays very different from a lot of other decks. I find it to be more of a fun deck than an actual meta deck. It could be considered rogue as it can take some games from the topping decks as well, though it does kind of struggle in some ways against a lot of the trap heavy decks, but it has ways around those as well, which we'll get into in this deck profile. And in general, it's cool being able to play Watts as a deck and Hunders in general and the Thunder kind of subgroup. So let's get straight into this deck profile. I know that you guys will enjoy it. So starting off with the monsters, we play 3 copies of Thunder Seahorse. This is your main searcher of the deck. You can discard it and add 2 level 4 light thunder monsters with the same name and 1600 or less attack from your deck to your hand, and then you can't special summon during the turn you activate this effect. Really good card. It searches pretty much everything that you could possibly want in this deck. I think there might actually only be like 2 cards it can't search in this deck, so if you open this, it's really good. Next, I play 2 copies of Watt Cobra and 2 copies of Watt Giraffe. So the thing is, a lot of builds will either play, 2 to 3 of this and 1 of this, or they'll play none of this and 3 of this. I think that 2 and 2 is perfect because you want to have more than 1 Watt Giraffe, but you don't want to have 3 of it, in my opinion. And so playing 2 and 2 also allows you to use those Thunder Seahorses to search both of them because they meet their requirements. So they both have the effect that they can attack your opponent directly, which is really good. Watt Cobra, when it inflicts damage from a direct attack, can add a Watt monster from deck to hand, so you're able to search your Giraffe. And Giraffe has a really good effect, which is, besides being able to attack directly, if it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the turn. So once we get into the Hunders, that might make a little more sense, but if you're able to attack with this and inflict damage and then make an Exciton in main phase 2, your opponent can't even respond and try to stop it with things like breakthrough skills and other things. So this card is just absurd. It's so good, and so I think 2 and 2 is perfect. Moving on to the Hunders, we play 3 copies of Hunder and 3 copies of Hunder. Again, all of them are searchable with the Seahorse. They each have the effect that once per turn, you can normal summon 1 level 4 light thunder monster from your hand, except itself, in addition to your normal summon. So what's really cool about that effect is, say you had multiples of these, you could summon Hunder, summon Hunder, summon Hunder, summon Hunder, and then if you had another thunder of sorts, for example, one of your Watts or some of the other monsters we'll get to, you're able to then summon that too. So that's a way to also be able to make multiple rank 4s in one turn. Obviously, you can't special summon during the turn that used the Seahorse, but if you just have multiple, it's really strong. After that, we do play 2 more Hunders, and those are 2 copies of Hunder. This one has a cool effect. It's not like the other ones that give you additional normal summons, but what it does is when it's normal summon, you target a level 4 light thunder monster with 1600 or less attack in your graveyard, you banish it, and during the end phase, you get to add that card to hand. So what that means is if you see this turn 1 with one of your Thunder Seahorses, you're able to use Thunder Seahorse, then summon this, banish the Seahorse, and have it for follow-up on the following turn, which is really cool. It also can recycle some of your other cards, for example, your Watt monsters. Next, 2 copies of Vylon Prism. It's a Thunder level 4, so, it works with the Hunders as well as, having under 1600, so it's searchable. If it's sent to the graveyard from the monster zone, you can pay 500 life points and equip it to a monster, and when it attacks or is attacked during the damage step, it will gain 1,000 attack. So what's cool with that is you're able to, for example, summon one of your Hunders, summon this, synchro summon, and then equip this to whatever monster you synchro summon. So usually you'd equip it with something like a Stardust Spark Dragon. So then if they try to pop the equip, you're able to protect it with the Stardust Spark effect, and it makes it really difficult to get over that monster. So really, really good card. I think 2 is the perfect amount because you don't want to see it way too much. After that, 1 copy of Thunder King. It's a Thunder, so if you have one of your Hunder monsters, you're able to summon it and then summon the Thunder King, as well as you play kind of a control game once we get into some of the spell and traps that you'll see. So having that's really strong. And the last monster is 1 copy of Honest. The other thing to note with Thunder King is a lot of decks just kind of crack under pressure of this. For example, decks that are playing Tenki can't search. Decks that, like Spellbook, that have to go through multiple searches, they can't do that. So sometimes just protecting Thunder King with cards like Honest or some of the spell and traps you'll see is really, really good. And it's a way to just make sure that, you can slowly win the game. Next, we play 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Again, you can't special summon on the turn you Thunder Seahorse, so being able to Thunder Seahorse, thin the deck, and then Duality in the same turn is really good, just being able to see more cards. Now, to make this deck more competitive and make it better against the artifact decks and other decks in general, you're not always going to be going first. So what I chose to do is play a lot of spell cards that kind of can counter those, as well as act as trap cards in a sense. So what I mean by that is 3 copies of Forbidden Chalice. Since, if you summon a Hunder, they might go Sanctum, summon a Moraltac, and try to pop it before you can get more of your plays through, so Chalice is a way to insulate and stop that. Then I play 2 copies of Lance and 2 copies of MST. If I'm being honest, I probably want to bump this to 3 as well. 2 MST is completely fine, but I think 3 Lance is probably one of the biggest changes I would make in this deck. So moving forward, I'll probably end up playing 3. Again, the normal summon is so important, and then having that additional effect is also really, really important. Then we play 2 copies of Recycling Batteries. You target 2 Thunder monsters in your graveyard with 15 or less attack, and add them to your hand. So unfortunately, this can't recycle your Seahorses, but it can recycle all of your Hunders, so if you make a big push with them, you're able to then re-add them back to hand. It's not once per turn either, so if you have a lot of them, you can just add them all back. 1 copy of Soul Charge. This deck wants to be able to attack because of how strong the Watts are and just trying to end games quickly, which is why I play only 1 of this. I considered playing 1 of Recycling Batteries and 2 of this, but I found that 2 and 1 was just a better ratio. And lastly, 1 Dark Hole, just a good generic card. Now for the traps, as I mentioned, you want to play this deck very control-y in a sense, where you're trying to do chip damage with the Watt monsters and make Xyz that can push for games. And so the way I figured was easiest is, since this deck sometimes can have problems clearing boards, why play through them at all? So we are playing 3 copies of Threatening Roar. This just allows you to have another turn. And for example, how I mentioned with Thunder King, how sometimes it just wins you the game. Sometimes, summoning a Watt monster and poking for some damage and then insulating the fact that you'll be able to do it again the next turn because they can't attack over it is really, really strong. So 3 Threatening Roar is really crazy to me. I enjoy this so much. No complaints at all. 1 copy of Breakthrough Skill. Breakthrough's a little less needed since we are already maining 3 Chalice. 1 Bottomless, 1 Torrential, and 1 Warning to round out the traps. Moving on to the extra deck, we play 1 copy of Crimson Blader, just because it's one of the better level 8 synchros that you can make with the Vylon. And, being able to use its effect, and when it kills a monster and sends it to the graveyard, making so your opponent can't normal or special summon 5 or higher makes it really good to prevent against things like Dragon Rulers, High Priestess, Mermails, just a good card. 1 copy of Scrap Dragon, just being able to out cards, and then the 1 copy of Stardust Spark. This card is just so good. If you can do the Hunder play plus have something like Thunder King on board, being able to protect the Thunder King or the Vylon or whatever in general, just a solid card. Also, this deck can side Vanity's Emptiness, since a lot of the times, you know, the Hunters are just giving you extra normal summons and you don't even need to use them as special summons. So sometimes if into siding, you side into Vanity's Emptiness, you can spark lock the Vanities, which is kind of cute. For the Xyz, 1 Ragna 0, 1 Constellar Omega. This allows you to make more pushes and insulate that it won't be able to get hit by some of that opponent's back row. 1 Black Ship of Corn, 1 copy of 101, 1 Giant Hand, 1 Heartland Draco. Again, you want to be able to push for game as much as you can with avoiding your opponent's board in the doing. So Heartland Draco is really cool. 1 Starleech Paladynamo. It needs lights. It negates an opponent's monster's effect and makes its attack 0. So initially this kind of is a direct attack if need be. In a sense, and also when it's destroyed, you will draw a card, which is nice. 1 Exciton, because like I mentioned with the Giraffe, if you attack with Giraffe, do the damage, and then you're able to main phase 2 Exciton your opponent. That's just crazy. 1 Bujinte Tsukiyomi, being able to get rid of your hand and draw 2 new cards, especially if, say, you had a set recycling batteries or something, you just gain so much advantage. 1 Dweller, 1 Cowboy because you want to end games quickly, and 1 copy of Rhapsody and Berserk for the DD Crow effect, as well as just equipping it to another Xyz and making it large. And that is it for the extra deck and the deck in general. You can really toolbox the extra deck for this. There's no specific cards that are like necessary that you for sure play. That's just my opinion. You can technically play like an M7 to stack on top of the Constellar if you really wanted to, as well as playing stuff like Diamond Dire isn't a bad card either. Though it's not even necessary in this deck because I'd rather have more things in the deck. Like I said, with the MSTs and everything else, you're not really afraid of back row too much, so outing certain cards isn't really the biggest deal. But yeah, that's just my opinion on this deck. If you have any other questions, make sure to comment those in the comments section. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, all that good stuff. And anyways, I will see you in the next video.